Hey, what's up guys? Icy Soul here for Icy Duelist, bringing you another Maul the Meta deck profile that I do every other Saturday. Since Halloween is coming up, I figured I would give you guys a Halloween-themed deck with some creepy cards and, that can, it's not necessarily, as all of the Maul the Meta deck profiles are, it's not necessarily going to be a really powerful deck, but it is just kind of a fun deck to play with your friends. So, getting into this deck profile, as you see, this is a 44 card deck. I tried actually making it 40 cards, and in order to get like the number of like traps and spells that I needed in here, plus the monsters, it just wasn't going to work at 40. I had to boost it up to 44. And with the control that this deck gives you over the board, and being able to just cancel out a lot of your opponent's plays, it doesn't really matter that there's like 4 extra cards in the minimum in this deck. It just the traps are basically what's gonna help you out in this deck, and I figured they needed to be a really integral part of this deck. So let's get into this list. Starting out, we have BLS, fairly standard. When you're running any sort of like light and dark deck, it's pretty much expected that you should have a BLS in your deck because it's just such a good card. And then we're running 2 Zombie Master. This is just for like a little bit of summoning power. You can like target 1 level 4 or lower zombie type in either player's graveyard, which actually helps with one of the spells we'll see coming up. And you can special summon it. And plus it's an 1800 beater, so you can't really complain. Next we have 2 Valor. This kind of works with Zumbow, but it also works, as a hand trap in and of itself. So that's pretty good. Moving on, we have Dark Resonator. This is kind of a good first turn play, because if you set it, it can't be destroyed by battle like once per turn. So if your opponent only has like 1 monster out, like they can only normal summon their first turn, they try attacking into this, it's not going to do much. And if you draw into like a higher level monster on your next turn, you can pull off a big synchro and have a big advantage. So Dark Resonator does pretty good in this deck. Next we have 2 Plague Spreader Zombie. This is, pretty much one of the greatest tuners, I think, in this deck, because since it has the ability to basically bring itself back from the graveyard, it's also a pretty good play where you can set it and have your opponent like destroy it, and then it'll just, if you have like a higher level card in your hand already, you can pull off a big synchro for, but you can't quite pull it off in 1 turn. Just set your Plague Spreader Zombie, they'll attack into it, destroy it, and then you can bring it back from the graveyard next turn as a special summon, then use your higher level monster as your normal summon, and then you can make some kind of big synchro out of that. So yeah, this deck, as you see, is pretty synchro heavy. Synchro and trap heavy. So moving on to Fabled Cruise. I'm running 2 of these. I just love the card art. It's super creepy. You have this little like demon girl in a dress crying. I think it's really creepy kind of card art. And there are other fabled monsters in this deck that this can work with, such as one of the other. We'll see the other fabled monster that this can work with. But of course, it can work with itself if you meet the requirements. It's just you have to discard when the card is discarded to the graveyard. Select 1 level 4 or lower fabled monster in your graveyard, accept this card and special summon it. So there isn't really many cards in this deck that will let you do that yourself. Like I think Allure Darkness is like the only card that can do that. But if your opponent is running some kind of like deck where they do try to discard cards from your hand, so they're playing a crazy box or some other. I know there's other synchros out there that destroy cards from your hand. So if your opponent is running some kind of deck that can get rid of cards out of your hand, this is a good card to have in your hand, especially if you have other fabled monsters in the graveyard. So I think it's a creepy looking card, and it has kind of a nice revival effect in it as well. 2 Zumbow, partly because the card art is just kind of creepy. Plus, if you can manage to keep it on the board, it is a little difficult considering it only has 1,000 attack. But if you can keep it on the board, and this can be a pretty pretty hard card to deal with because it gains 500 attack every time it declares an attack. So attack with it like 3 times, you're getting 1500 attack, so that's up to a 2500 beater already. So that's that if you can manage to keep it on the field, it is absolutely amazing. And plus, when it's destroyed, you can bring out your Veiler until your next end phase. So if you have like a higher level monster in your hand and Zambao is on the field, it's destroyed. You can bring out your Veiler and then tune with your higher level monster for a synchro next turn. So that's pretty good. Moving on to Paladin of Cursed Dragon. Kind of works as another one of those revival cards in the deck. It's basically also a 1900 beater, so it's pretty good. It's really all it's used for is if like you're have a zombie type monster that was destroyed by battle, this card can bring it back out. I wish it would have some kind of effect where it wasn't just by battle and it was just destroyed, period, because so many card effects keep destroying these monsters, and it would help if it would be just destroyed at all, but it is only destroyed by battle. That kind of sucks, but it is quite helpful if you can pull it off. Moving on, this is our other fabled monster, fabled Aristos. I love that creepy card art too. It's like this sort of like Grim Reaper-ish kind of devil demon skull thing. But not only does this card work with Fabled Crews, it also has a pretty neat effect in and of itself, where if you have 2 or less cards in your hand, all face-up Fabled monsters, including itself, gain 400 attack. So it's also pretty good if you have like a bunch of traps in your hand, or a bunch of cards that you can set, spells or traps really. Just put a bunch of them down, make sure you have 2 or less cards in your hand, and then summon Fabled Aristos, and he automatically becomes a 1900 beater. So I think that's pretty good. And of course, if you have like another one out, they each plus off of each other, and of course, Fabled Crews can add to that as well. So they kind of, if you have like a bunch of Fabled monsters on your board, it'll definitely help in the attack department. Moving on, this is the only card that's not really creepy, but I kind of needed it in the deck anyway, and that's Junk Synchron, because, 1, it's a level 3 tuner. It's a pretty good tuner for this deck. Plus, it works with getting out stuff like Veiler, Plague Spreader, Cruise, Zambao, so it can pull a lot of stuff from the graveyard, and it helps with like synchros and stuff. So Junk Synchron, not really creepy, but really kind of useful in this deck. Moving on, we have 2 Fear from the Dark, just creepy card art for Halloween, and the effect hasn't proved to be that useful, but it is a good 1700 beater, and it can, if it is discarded from the hand or the deck, or sent to the graveyard, by way, but not when it's not on the field and it's sent to the graveyard, you can special summon it, which, if that effect pops off, it's brilliant. Moving on, we just have 1 Dark Necrofear, because there are very few fiend types in this deck. I think like the Dark Resonator, the Fableds, are really the only fiends in the deck, but if you can get them in your graveyard and you draw into this, it's probably going to be a game changer for you, just like BLS. So I run 1 of these Dark Necrofear, plus it's creepy, and she's holding like a severed like doll spine, so it's pretty creepy. Moving on, we have 2 Zombie Worlds, and this kind of does make Dark Necrofear kind of a dead card, but it does help with a lot of the other cards in the deck, because it makes every monster on the field and in either player's graveyard a zombie type. So that way you can use some of the other cards in this deck to resurrect cards from the graveyard, and they'll be considered zombie types, so it's quite a lot easier. Moving on, we have 1 Allure of Darkness, just for a little extra draw power in the deck, whatever. 2 Dualities, just for more extra draw power. 3 MSTs, pretty standard. 2 Book of Life is obviously one of your main cards for resurrecting your zombie type monsters, because not only does it resurrect your zombie type monsters, but it also banishes your opponent's monsters at the same time. So I figured that it was a better idea to run these rather than Call of the Haunted, because Call of the Haunted is kind of, it only lets you resurrect in attack position first of all, and it doesn't do anything to your opponent's monsters. This actually lets you special summon in either attack or defense, plus it banishes your opponent's monster in the process. So I figured this was a good card to include, so I'm running 2 of those. Next we have one Raigeki as kind of like your clear the board of your opponent's monsters card. 3, this is where the deck truly shines out, isn't it? Traps, because the traps kind of keep your ass like alive in this deck, because it is extremely a weak deck, probably one of the weakest decks I've ever made. So the traps really help it to stay afloat and keep its head above water. We have 3 breakthrough skills for negating your opponent's card effects. Plus, if they're in the graveyard and it's your turn, you can negate an effect until the end phase. But of course, when it's set, you can do it on your opponent's turn. But when it's in your graveyard, you can do it on your turn. So whatever. We have 1 torrential. Works with just clearing the board when you need it to. Plus, like, if these cards are in the graveyard, they are kind of they do kind of plus off of each other when they're in the graveyard. So 1 warning, because it's nice to have a negation card in the deck like warning. 3 Fiendish Chains. These are kind of like the biggest beasts of the deck, because with the big effect chains that we have going on these days, like this I've actually seen this card. Of course, they came back and beat me in the end, but there was a duel I had with this deck where they exceeded into Dante. It was a Burning Abyss deck, and they exceeded into Dante, and I just Fiendish Chain Dante, and it kind of shut them out for a while. And so this can kind of keep you alive against some of the tier 2, tier 1 decks. It's not necessarily going to help you win, but it will help you stay in the game a little bit longer. So yeah, great card, Fiendish Chain. That's why I'm running 3 of them. And then finally we have 3 Magic Cylinder for, those big beaters that your opponent gets out that they try to attack you with. Like if they get a BLS, you just say, nope, Magic Cylinder, and they suddenly have a bad day. So, moving on to the extra deck, we have only 2 Xyz. We have Kachi Kochi Dragon, which lets you attack again. It's kind of like a BLS, but with Xyz. It lets you attack again by attaching an Xyz material if it destroys a monster in battle, so I figure that's good. And number 44, Sky Pegasus, because there are quite a few there's a few level 4s in this deck that you can make this with, and generally it'll help drain your opponent's life points. They usually will pay the 1,000 life points to negate your effect, so it helps drain your opponent's life points even faster, and that's what you kind of need with this deck. And you kind of need to drain your opponent's life points as fast as possible, so your weak little monsters can come in and attack and swoop up the victory. And then we have a crap ton of synchros, because there are quite a few tuners in this deck, so I figure, make it a synchro heavy deck. So we have, for our level 3 synchro, we have Miss Bird Colossus. It says once per turn you can target 1 face-up monster your opponent controls. Until the end of this turn, that monster's attack becomes 0 and its effects are negated. So yeah, you can get this out. This can help against some beaters too, so it's a good card to get out. Next we have Underworld Fighter Balmung. It lets you just special summon level 4s from your graveyard. Pretty mandatory. Magical Android for our level 5. It lets you gain some life points because it does count itself as a psychic type monster, so you can just gain 600 life points. Plus it's 2400 attack, so you don't really have to worry too much about it getting run over, so it's pretty good. Next we have Junk Warrior, which works, of course, really well with Junk Synchron. If you can, get your monsters out by Junk Synchron's effect, get your level 2s out, and then, synchro with one of those level 2s, suddenly, your Junk Warrior can get up to pretty high attack, so it's a pretty good card. Next we have one Goyo, because it's 2800 beater that, basically, special summons destroyed monsters to your side of the field. It's crazy. Goyo is amazing. I used to hate dealing with Goyo back in the day of Dragon Rulers, but he's pretty good now. I like him. Next we have one Chaos King Archfiend. Of course, this only really works with your Fiend types, which I believe one of these Fiends is a tuner. Forgetting which one it is. Oh yes, it's Dark Resonator. So this really only works with Dark Resonator. But if you can do it, it does help deal with some beaters as well, because it can switch the attack and defense of your opponent's monsters. So I figured it was useful. Black Rose Dragon, clear the board. It's a level 7 synchro. Of course, you can't use its secondary effect, but I mean, come on, it's Black Rose Dragon. It clears the field. What more can you want? For our level 8, we have one Beals. Beals just super hard to deal with. 3,000 beater, and it's immune to pretty much everything. It's extremely hard to get over, so if you can get this card out, kudos to you, and you'll probably just wreck your opponents. Ogre Rock Castle for our level 9 synchro. Of course, I don't know how many like or synchro material you're going to be using to make this card, but it does gain 200 attack and defense for each card you use to do that. Plus, it's already got 2,900 attack, so I mean, come on. Next, for our level 10, we have Leo, the Keeper of the Sacred Tree. It basically it can't be targeted at all, except during main phase 2, which isn't really that much of a problem. But yeah, it's like 3,100 attack, can't be targeted. It's awesome. Level 11, we have Star Eater. It is, a lot of these synchros are pretty vulnerable to like stuff like Regeki, Dark Hole. You know, so you got to make sure you watch out for those destruction cards. But the synchro summon can't be negated when you summon this card, and it's unaffected by card effect if it attacks. Plus, it's got 3,200 attack, so I mean, come on. And then finally, we have a Quasar, because you know every big synchro deck needs a Quasar. Yeah, I guess that's it for the Spiritual Demise deck profile. As always, I'll leave a link in the description for you to download this deck yourself and import it into DevPro. And make sure you stay tuned not next Saturday, but the Saturday after for another deck profile. And make sure, I believe it's this coming Wednesday, you're going to see a duel with this deck in action. So, yeah, as always, this is Icy Soul for Icy Duelist, signing out.